I had the pleasure of authoring AB 176, which would address the issue of providing disaggregated data in areas where we need it and it's not being provided. And that all started with a conversation that I had with Fong La, who you'll hear from in a moment, who called me up and said, this is really important to the commission, to our community throughout the state, and we'd like you to author it, and we'd like you to work with the caucus to get this done this year. And the caucus made it a top priority. It was one of our top bills that we met with the governor and his staff about, and so he was well aware of its importance to us and our communities, and we were able to get it through both houses almost unanimously. I think there was only one no vote. The Senate was unanimous, and the Assembly all but one vote. And this bill starts from a simple but powerful idea that communities shouldn't be rendered invisible, that with monoliths and aggregated data, they are rendered invisible, and it makes a simple request. We don't want to be concealed. We simply don't want to be rendered invisible. We want to be counted and measured. It doesn't say anything about any policies that might follow, although I'm very supportive of data-driven, evidence-based policies, and this bill would have provided that data and that evidence. So we're disappointed with the governor's response in a number of ways. Of course, the outcome. We had no indication that there would be a veto. In fact, we had the opposite, that it was a bill that had good ideas and that it was low cost, something very important to this fiscally responsible governor. And so it was somewhat of a surprise when the veto came, but more surprising and disappointing was the veto message and the rationale behind it. There was one component where the governor said, when you have more data, more wisdom follows, and that can help drive policy. And with that, we agree. But with everything else that came after it, we respectfully but very strongly disagreed.
Southeast Asian communities now number over 2 million nationwide, with over 900,000 residing in California alone. California is also home to over 340,000 Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders, second only to Hawaii. Yet after having made this country our home, many within our communities are drowning within a system that does not acknowledge our struggles and actively disempowers our communities. Southeast Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders are systematically rendered invisible in our country's outdated data systems that haven't caught up with the reality of our richly diverse community, where we are all lumped under the Asian American Pacific Islander umbrella, which consists of more than 67 different groups. Southeast Asian students have a high school dropout rate of 40%, compared to 12% for Asian Pacific Islander American students overall. Additionally, a recent report released, of course, by the Campaign for College Opportunity revealed that while 44% of Asian American communities hold a bachelor's degree, this is only true for 29% of Vietnamese, 16% of Cambodians, 13% of Hmong, 12% of Guamanian or Chamorro, 12% of Samoan, 10% of Laotian, 9% of Tongan, and 1.6% of Marshallese American communities. Further, Hmong, Cambodian, and Tongan Americans experience the highest poverty rates in California, with 42% for Hmong, 33% for Cambodian, 25% for Tongan communities. In addition, despite high levels of eligibility for health insurance, enrollment for Southeast Asian American and Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander families in covered California was especially particularly low this year. AB 176's passage would have been instrumental in revealing chronic disparities with both higher education and healthcare access for all our communities. AB 176 would have provided California with the opportunity to blaze trails in serving communities that have been rendered invisible through our outdated data systems in the nation.
Policymakers and state leaders in California have to cease to lump Asian Americans into a monolithic whole. I think you will continue to hear this statement. And yet, absent a coordinating board in California collecting data, We are reliant upon our public systems of higher education to report data that reflects the disaggregated group findings. And then we need to use those findings to compel action across the state. State leaders must unite to ensure that all communities of color have access and succeed in California colleges and universities. We cannot import enough talent out of state or internationally to meet workforce demand. So as I said, this is a social and moral imperative, but this is also about the future workforce identity of our state and economic well-being. Bills like AB 176 have sought to address the disparities we've seen in the collection of data, and frankly, we were very dismayed by the veto of this pragmatic bill that would help us to prioritize state funding for ethnic groups that are often left behind. We think that moving forward, the state needs to prioritize a clear plan with goals for meeting the needs of future workforce that include ensuring that the populations we've just discussed, Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders, are included, and that there are strategies for ensuring that they are accessing at greater numbers, that they are being retained in our public colleges and universities, and that they are completing at rates much higher than they are today.
And the response to the need was unanimous. It was a need to disaggregate the data when it comes to higher education and healthcare to truly see what our communities needed. We took what we heard in these public hearings back to our friends in the State Assembly. We asked Assemblymember Bonta to write up the bill. What we heard was amazing. The community doesn't want a handout from the state government. What the community wants is a level playing field. And we can't have a level playing field without knowing what it would take to make it even. Being a refugee to this country myself in Vietnam, I saw firsthand the issues that affect our refugee Southeast Asian community. The community struggles from a lot of things, but we can't figure out what those things are and how to help those that need the help without getting the information. We were thrilled when the Assembly passed AB 176. We were beyond ecstatic when the Senate unanimously passed AB 176. We were beyond disappointed when the governor vetoed AB 176. And as a governor's appointee to the commission, I took it a little personally. We wanted the governor to see how important this was to our community. We still want that. I was thrilled to hear that Assemblymember Bonta will reintroduce the bill. We look forward to next year where we know that our job is to educate those that don't know or are not aware of the importance of disaggregated data collection.
This is going to be an ongoing issue. It's not going away. Communities should not be rendered invisible. They should be counted. The disparate outcomes are clear and many, as has been discussed by some of our prior speakers. And what else was important was that the governor has already signed a similar bill to this, a bill authored by Assemblymember Mike Ng, which addressed two other departments and disaggregating data for those other departments, one of which was the Department of Industrial Relations. So we thought it was an extension, a step of additional progress to have the same sort of data be collected for our higher ed institutions and our health institutions. And so we are committed to bringing back a similar bill this year and getting it passed. We're committed to working with the governor to get him to a place where he can sign the bill. We think that process includes getting more voices together in the room to talk about how important this is to us and why, and an education process, which we're very happy to engage in. But this bill is so important and not going away that we are going to continue to fight. And so with disappointment in the governor's veto, we are coalescing together once again to continue the fight and commit to doing so next year and getting a bill signed that renders all of our communities visible and allows us to create policies that help address the disparate outcomes that they're facing.